Even after the Caves and Cliffs update, Minecraft's terrain can still be really lackluster. If you've built anything in Minecraft, you've probably done some amount of terraforming. Whether it's flattening out an area for your house or adding a little waterfall by your base, we've all tried to improve Minecraft's terrain in one way or another. Of course, you can go a lot further than a simple little waterfall or a tiny cliff. Many people like me, you know me, opt to terraform the land around their base completely, making fully custom beautiful terrain. Emphasis on beautiful. I know projects like this may seem daunting, so I'm here to give you a 5-step breakdown on how to create some of your own custom terraforming. Also, I'll be following along the steps on my own so you can see how they work and better understand them. By the way, my name is Shoeler. I make Minecraft survival building videos. It's whatever. and you should subscribe because that would be awesome. Okay, sorry. Now we're gonna move on to step number 1, inspiration. Whether it's terrain you found in a Minecraft world you want to accentuate or some concept art you found online, you need to start somewhere. And there are lots of places you can start. 1. The simplest thing you can do is find some already cool terrain in Minecraft and make it look even cooler. Like, you know, you could just accentuate this a little bit more and put your house on top of it. Easy inspiration. 2. Many people like me also take inspiration from Minecraft YouTubers. Good Times with Scar is amazing at terraforming and is who first got me into it. I just completely copied the way he terraformed terrain until I developed my own sense of style. And here I am making a terraforming video years later. Yep, I'm pretty amazing. Which reminds me, if you want, I'm always doing terraforming projects on my series, so feel free to take inspiration from those videos. 3. Something I always look at is national parks across the world. Surprise, surprise, the world is beautiful, and you can easily find inspiration in many things. For instance, not too far from my childhood home, there's this huge, crazy waterfall that I took inspiration from for this, you know, survival world. So go outside or look at pictures of outside. I'm not one to comment on your habits. It's like 100 degrees here and the AC is very nice. 4. If you have somewhat of an idea of what you're going for already, you can use Pinterest to find specific photos or locations that you want to emulate. Here, for example, you can search up Glacier National Park and, you know, you'll get a bunch of photos, but you can also add something to your query like waterfall. And then wouldn't you know it, you'd get a bunch of waterfalls from Glacier National Park. The internet is truly amazing. 5. Another thing I've done in the past is make a doodle. If I have a cool idea in mind, I'll draw it and then I can add it into Minecraft later. It works pretty well, especially if you're good at drawing. I'm pretty good. All you need to know is that there are many places to get your inspiration from. While it is completely possible to freeform your terraforming, meaning building some terrain without any idea in mind, it is way easier to have an idea in mind that you can paint on your Minecraft canvas. And I'm gonna do just that. So throughout this video, I'm gonna be coming in intermittently just to, you know, actually follow my steps. And right now we're gonna grab some inspiration. The terraforming that I wanna build is the terraforming that I'm gonna use for the thumbnail. So I already have like a little bit of like a sketch of the thumbnail, and this is kind of what I want the terraforming to look like. But now I'm gonna hop on Pinterest and I'm going to get some additional photos to inspire me. And honestly, I did like the idea of doing Glacier National Park, so I think I might actually steal from here. And so I went forth, collecting a bunch of images. Okay, cool. So I went through and I got a few more ideas. But yeah, I think I got what I need. That's gonna move us on to step number 2. This step's a little hard to explain, so give me some grace on it. Essentially, your terraforming will differ greatly based on the biome you're in. If you're trying to terraform a forest or a jungle, you might go for some hilly terrain with some dense bushes. However, if you're terraforming in a mesa biome, you're not gonna do the same thing. And you better not. Use my tips and tricks for good, not bad. This really goes back to your inspiration. If you're emulating a real-life location or biome, study how they look. Does your biome have trees? What types of trees? How many? Notice the rules. The rules will guide you. If you're emulating some YouTuber's terraforming style, take note of their rules. Notice how they never show the side of a grass block, opting to use moss instead. Notice how they use layers of rocks for their cliff faces. Notice the rules. The rules will guide you. And if all you know is that you want to make a mountain, you're probably going to find yourself making some unconscious rules for yourself. No one told you to not use diorite in your cliff face. You're no sheep. But that's the thing. When you're terraforming, you unconsciously have a set of rules in mind. These rules can be as big as I will only use stone for cliff faces, or as small as I will only place 1 fern per every 5 grass. No matter what they are, I want you to be conscious of these rules, maybe even write them down. Heck, I've written down mine for this terraforming project I did. Here's proof. I'll be honest, I actually only just wrote them down, but the point still stands. As soon as you become conscious of your rules, I'm telling you, it will be far easier for you to learn, and your terraforming will look 1,000 times better. Okay, back at it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some of these pins and I'm going to assemble a list of rules for my terraforming. Again, you don't need to write it all down, but it is helpful to visualize it in some way. And so I went forth again, assembling a list of rules. I got my list here. It took me like maybe 5 minutes to do. Just keep in mind, this is very easy to do, but it will help you out tremendously. We're gonna move on to the next step shortly, but first I have a quick announcement to make. I have a Cameo account and all the profits go to charity, specifically the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. So I just want to say, if you're looking to buy something for someone this holiday season, buy a video from me. It's only $1 and all the profits go to charity. It's awesome. But yeah, buy through the website, not through the app. And let's move on to step number 3. Shaping is the most basic form of terraforming. Making a shape, it's self-explanatory. So I'm going to be giving you my tips and tricks on how to make your shape look good, or at least better. You may not get it on the first try, I'm sorry. So to begin, there's 2 ways to do terraforming, by hand and by mod. Listen, I'll get this out of the way. Whether it is World Edit, Axiom, World Painter, or some other mod or third-party service, mods will let you terraform way faster. But they will not teach you how to make good-looking terraforming. I'll put it this way. If you want to learn how to paint huge murals, you're not going to start by painting a mural. You'll start with maybe a small canvas or just a sheet of paper. The same applies with terraforming. If you want to learn terraforming, you need to learn by hand first. And then, you know, these mods will be like a graduation gift once you've learned. Here. I made 4 cliffs. 2 of them I made in just 5 minutes, 1 by hand and 1 with mods. And 2 of them I made in 20, also the same. I'm gonna bring in Panka, my partner of over 2.5 years, to see if they can guess which one I made by hand and which one I made by mod. Panka is amazing and the greatest partner ever, and they better not disprove my point, or else I will cry. Get your Minecraft voice on.
How's it going, bros? Welcome back to PewDiePie.
Yeah. Okay, Panka, so today I have 2 cliffs for you.
Wait, no. Are you being serious?
I want you to guess, Panka, which one is made by me, by my hands, and which one is made by some stupid mod. And which one do you like better?
But yeah, I don't like that you put these grasses here. And I also don't like that you left the inside of the hollow.
Bro.
Final verdict is that this one was better.
Yay! Okay, these 2, which ones do you like the most?
Ooh, baby, what are you doing walking around alone? Shouldn't you have a man with you? I could fill in that spot.
Okay, maybe let's not catcall these terraformings. As you can see, mods may be fast and efficient, but they do not necessarily make better terraforming. Good terraforming comes from your artistic ability to assemble a bunch of blocks in a pleasing way, telling a story, not a program's ability to place a whole bunch of blocks for you quickly. Good terraformers use mods, but just to get a basic shape and to make repetitive tasks faster. All good terraformers go in by hand to add in their final artistic touches. My advice: start small. I definitely recommend using mods once you're comfortable enough, but I promise that you will get a lot better, a lot quicker when you're getting intimately close with the blocks. Not in a weird way though. Okay, now let's actually talk about how to create a shape for your terraforming. There are so many things that fall under the category of terraforming: rivers, hills, mountains, cliffs, waterfalls, lakes, and much, much more. So I'm going to cover each one individually, and just know in this section, I'm just talking about shaping. We're not going to pick out any blocks yet. Let's start with rivers and waterfalls. Rivers are windy little guys. Rarely will you see a river that's straight. Actually, you'll never see a river that's straight, because at that point it is a canal or channel. As you probably learned in your 3rd grade science class, rivers flow downwards from a source, and then the water flows in a usually windy route and deposits into an ocean, lake, or, larger river, just something lower in elevation. And then the path that it takes is whatever is easiest. Building off that, I got some tips for you. 1. Keep your rivers windy and smooth. Just by doing that, I promise you that your rivers are going to look so much better. This is a simple river that I think I made in less than like 10 minutes, but even though it took so little time, it looks so much better than, most rivers you see in Minecraft worlds because it has little bends and curves in it. If you don't know how to make your bends and curves look smooth, just keep at it, keep practicing, make S's. I promise this is the #1 strategy to make your rivers look that much better on a large scale. So if you take away anything from this video, it should be that your river should have bends. If you want a straight river like this, there's a time and place for that. Just make sure that, you make it look man-made in some way. This will give it a little bit of story. Even though this river looks unnatural, now it's like, is unnatural because some guy made it and not Mother Nature. Also, rivers don't need to be super windy like this. So just give your straight river a little curve and then it'll look that much better. 2. As for the shape of the riverbed, just keep it smooth. Just make sure that you're always making a U shape. You should just generally try to avoid harsh lines like, this square and this triangle. And then, come on, rivers don't have overhangs like this, so don't do this. It just looks like you forgot to do your river correctly. But yeah, they really just don't look great, and it just kind of looks like the world generation made a mistake. No offense, no offense. In this video, I'm going to recommend making smooth looking shapes, whether it's, that river shape or these riverbed shapes. So I'm just going to give you a quick little way to kind of think about that. Generally with smoothing, you're going to start with a large number and taper down to a small one, if that makes sense. So say I'm starting with 3 like that. I'd go diagonally down 1, then we go to 2, then to 1, and then we come back up. So then we go 2, 3, and there we go. Now we have a smooth little U shape. And I mean, if you've done any amount of pixel art in the past, this is kind of like something that you'll learn pretty soon on. Learning how to smooth things out is just something that you learn after doing it many, many, many times over. But I hope that this can kind of get you started on the right track. 3, make sure that the land around your river is all higher than it. If the land was lower than it, then, this water would start rushing down and flowing into it. Simple as that. Rivers should not be flush with your ground level. 4, if you're making deltas or an island in your river, just make sure that you're smoothing it out, having the islands and delta kind of taper off like this on either end. If I was the water, I shouldn't be, hitting this and getting stuck here. I should be hitting an edge and then kind of rolling off. So yeah, just make sure that you taper it out on either end. 5, although rivers do technically flow downwards in elevation like this, let's be honest. That's hard to do in Minecraft. And I mean, me personally, I would never want to do that on a large scale. So, it's fine to keep your river flat. And don't worry, if you want to add some elevation to your river, don't feel pressured to work with the funky logistics of water. Just make a waterfall like this. All I did was just mine out this area and extend the waterfall out a little bit, and there we go. 6, finally, the most important rule, although I have been known to ignore this rule, give your rivers a source. Rivers don't just appear, they'll come from somewhere. And just think about how cool you'll look when you're showing off your river to some friend and you're like, and this is the source of the river. That'll be cool. The source of rivers is usually rain, snowmelt, or glacial runoff. Here's a little glacier, so now this guy has a source. But also rivers can come up from underwater pockets of water, making its way up and out. And sometimes rivers are just runoff water from lakes or large ponds. And now to cliffs. Cliffs are little drop-offs of land that meets other land. There's a variety of ways that you could go about making them. smooth, jagged, blocky, like a bunch of boulders kind of stacked on top of each other, perfect. You can make them all out of rock. You can do this little dirt overhang thing, or you can just put moss on top of it and call it a day. The technique that you use is largely based on your inspiration and its environment. So let's talk about some generalizations of cliffs. 1. Cliffs are very steep and generally don't have any major overhangs other than lighter materials like dirt, grass, or moss. But use the rules how you want. You can abide by them and use no overhangs to make more realistic looking terrain, or you can take advantage of them, making a bunch of overhangs and arches to give your terrain a more mystical feel. I mean, you could also create a huge point of interest with like a jutting out piece of rock. It's up to you and relates back to your inspiration. Look at this. Look at that. Look at me go. I'm just overarching storyline. 2. Since cliffs are products of erosion, think about how the material you're working with, like terracotta, would degrade over time, and how the environment of your cliff would degrade it over time. So if you're working with sandstone or terracotta, that material is generally less strong than stone and basalt in real life. I mean, think about the Paria River Canyon in Utah. That thing is smooth and it's terracotta. Sandstone and terracotta are generally less strong than stone and basalt. Thus, sandstone and terracotta cliffs are generally smoother than their stronger rock counterparts. But if your cliff is by water or would experience frequent wind, it may become smoother by the environment. So when you're making a cliff, think of the material and think of the environment. If you consistently go into terraforming thinking about how your terrain was formed, you will master terraforming. Dead stop. Congratulations. Now I'll actually help you out a little bit and give you some tips on how I go about making cliffs. So first up, smooth terraforming. One strategy I use is I use dirt or some other block to kind of sketch out an idea of what I want. So, you know, I just want like a sloped cliff like this, and then maybe over here I want like a cliff that like actually leans over, and then over here I just want like a hill that smooths out and then goes over on top of both of these guys. So all I'm going to do for this is I'm just going to take the little dirt sketches that I came up with and I'm going to start filling in the gaps. So I'd use grass for all of the slopey bits that we're going to, you know, put grass on or some other type of block, and then I'd use stone for all of these things. And see, now it's actually starting to come together. But see, just from filling in the gaps, I already got a cliff face that I'm pretty proud of. Obviously I'm gonna like adjust it a little bit later, but this is pretty much already like 80% of the way there. And there we go. I mean, I didn't do the back, but you know, we got a very basic shape outlined here, and now all that's left is just getting in some more detailed blocks. And so now something that I do is I just come in with andesite walls and stone slabs to kind of smooth it out a little bit. I think walls are a great technique because they're kind of like a vertical slab, except they also go in a little bit on both sides. So they just smooth things out really nicely. But there we go. That took me maybe like 10 minutes max to complete. And already we have a pretty smooth piece of terraforming. Obviously, if I was going to put this into a world or something, I would put in a little more work. I'd make it a little more interesting, add more onto it, all that. But I got it to a very decent spot just by using dirt to sketch out the thing and using walls and slabs to kind of smooth it out. So for this next type of terraforming, I'm going to be making rocky terraforming. This is a look that I utilize quite often, and I think it looks pretty cool. It definitely is pretty hard though. So with making like little boulders and stuff, we're just going to take the same lesson that we did when we were looking at rivers and stuff and just do the same kind of smooth technique. It should be noted I'm making a perfect sphere just for the visuals. If I were to actually make this, I would make it a little more lumpy and less symmetrical. And if we do the outlines like this, then we can start to see how it's going to form. And this is definitely something that has to be practiced, but I just made a, you know, kind of like, I guess like an eighth of a sphere or something, and if I just duplicate this around, and there we go, there's just a boulder. And if I was gonna work on this anymore, I would literally just add in more and more and more boulders. Like maybe I'd put one like right here-ish, and then maybe I'd put one out to the side over here, and then as I put more and more and more boulders together, it'll start to look something like this. The next thing that I'm going to teach you is the grassy overhang. This is something that I did quite a lot when I first got into terraforming and have kind of shifted away into doing something else, but it still looks very cool, and that is undeniable. So basically we're just going to get in the cliff. I'm just going to do something super simple, just I don't know. There we go. That's nothing special. But now we're going to start adding in the grass. And so usually what I'll do is I'll give myself a little room and I'll kind of make a little staircase like that and then kind of float it down like this towards the end. And then basically what you're just going to do is you're going to take the dirt and go down and just add in these little pillars and stuff. Try not to make anything homogeneous. So like I'd put that back there and then do something like this or something. The only constant with this style of terraforming is that it is all trial and error. But yeah, there we go. There it is. It's nothing special and it's not my greatest work, obviously. This is a build I would definitely recommend using grass on and stuff. I'm technically skipping steps by doing this, but I'd really recommend adding grass and stuff because, you know, even though there is dirt on the top, when you're looking at it from down, it just doesn't look green at all unless you add in, you know, these short grass and long grass and ferns and all that. That's all I'm going to cover for cliffs as of right now in terms of shaping, but we'll get into more of it later. Okay, hills and mountains. I don't know if this is scientifically accurate, but I define hills as smooth, rolling guys and mountains as jagged triangles. Saying that made me realize that it's definitely not scientifically accurate. In my definition, mountain ranges are just like the combinations of cliffs and hills. If you look at any mountain, you'll see some smoother, flatter parts, and you'll also see some huge, jagged parts. For mountains, you can just apply the same rules that I gave you for cliffs, because if you look at this is just a bunch of cliffs that meet together at a point. Mountains are that simple. And just remember to taper your mountains out just like you would for your cliffs. Mountains don't form like triangles. They form like really tall, skinny, slightly smooth triangles. Now, I'll talk about hills, which are a really loose category of things. For instance, you could make a really steep hill if you wanted, but you could also make a really flat hill. So let's get to some tips. In general, I think it's a good idea to keep your hills subtle because if they're too steep, they'll just end up looking like a pile. And we don't want that, do we? With hills, you just want to keep two things in mind: smoothing and tapering. So basically, your land should always be either smoothed out or tapered in. The reason why Minecraft's terrain looks kind of artificial and blocky sometimes is because, you know, this isn't smoothed out or anything. There's no thought being put into connecting these things at all. In the real world, land is kind of smoothed out like this, like it was at the bottom of a river basin. But yeah, my general rule of thumb is just to taper in or to smooth out. And then I never try to have any faces on my hill that looks like this. I try my very hardest to make sure that all of my hills are no steeper than this. But yeah, that's hills. Woo! So there you have it, the most basic forms of terraforming and how to shape them. Before we move on though, I just want to highlight 5 main rules to keep in your head. 1. Don't build on flat ground. I know it's the easiest thing to do, but that's not what the world looks like. I flattened out this area in my survival world for a future building project, but still, I kept elevation in it. It's flat enough that I'm able to put houses and buildings and stuff on it, but it's got a little bit of elevation, which just makes it look that much cooler. 2. I'm just so tired of being able to tell when I'm at someone's base when the ground just suddenly becomes flat, and it's always covered with torches and the ground is usually just empty, which brings me to the next step. Keep your terraforming small and don't do too much. It's easy to get carried away with your terraforming plans. Huge mountains and terrains are sick, but remember that you still have to decorate them. I promise you are going to be kicking yourself when you've made a really cool terraforming project but only managed to cover maybe 1% of it with trees or buildings. See, I built this huge terraforming project years ago and was really proud of it. There's a huge cave behind the waterfall. I built this huge city with just so many houses and trees, but look at how much empty space there is. I'm kicking myself, dude. Take it from me, terraform just a little bit at a time, finish all your decorating and stuff, and then you can terraform a little bit more. 3. On a related note, less is more. One of the best uses of terraforming is guiding the eye, allowing people to see what you want them to see and not see what you don't want them to see, like this. Whether it's BOO's forest on a bluff overlooking his base, or it's my canyon stream that takes you through a tunnel and then lets you see a waterfall, we guided your eyes and had you see what we wanted you to see. Big mountains are cool, but make sure that there's an artistic point to them. 4. This is a basic tip. I've said it once. I'll say it again. I'll say it, a billion more times this episode. Tapering and smoothing. Always keep this in mind. Whether it's a river, a cliff, a hill, you should always be tapering and smoothing. The world is smooth and tapered, not jagged and blocky. 5. If you want to make a house, build first, terraform later. While yes, I wouldn't have been able to make this cliffside house without terraforming first, in general, it's a good idea to do your terraforming around a building. If one block is off in your building so that it can fit onto a piece of land, that is much more noticeable than if one block is off in the terrain. This rule will also help you with keeping your terraforming small. You'll just be terraforming where it's needed. All right, we're in a little creative world that I have set up. I flattened out this area a little bit because I'm going to be doing some building. But first, I'm going to actually sketch out this build with, some dirt. And then when I'm done, I will come back. Okay, so I got a dirt sketch in. I got like a little mountain there, a little mountain there, then a big mountain back there. And then I used some blue wool to kind of sketch out where I want the water to go. And I think I like it. Yeah, I'm just gonna start placing some blocks and stuff, filling in the gaps, and yeah. Okay, that probably took like 2 seconds in the time lapse, but this took me like a good hour or two. The shaping isn't perfectly finished, but I wanted to come in to kind of show you what my next step is gonna be. While I was building this, I was realizing that the rocks on the cliffs of my inspiration, they're not really that smooth. So I decided to just put in this first smooth layer of stone. And then I was gonna come in and kind of do little bulbous rocks coming out of there like this, and then that should make it look less smooth and hopefully more like my inspiration. But yeah, I'll do that and hopefully finish up the rest of the shaping, and then we'll move on. Boom, there we go. I'm tired of building, but I did it all the shaping is done. And you know what that means? It's time to move on to step number 4, texture. So, texturing basically means what blocks are you going to use and how are you going to use them? Are you going to use blocks to shade your terrain? Are you going to make beds of sedimentary rocks? Figure out a pattern of blocks and stick to it for your entire terrain, because if you don't do that, it's just going to look weird and off. To make this easy, we're going to go through the same categories that we did in shaping, rivers, mountains, that kind of stuff, and then we'll discuss different techniques you can use to texture them. Like we did with shaping, we'll start again with rivers and waterfalls. So there are 3 things to texture with rivers and waterfalls: the floor, the shore, and the water itself. For the floor, if I'm being honest, I'd personally recommend that you don't texture it. While yes, it does look better if you texture it in some way, it's not really that essential. You can't see through Minecraft water too well, and not a lot of people are going to be jumping in there and going, oh, you didn't texture here, you didn't texture here. It's just a lot of work for very little gain. Me personally, I'd recommend that you just place down some seagrass on whatever floor you want. Keep it sparse, but busy. Don't use too many too tall ones. And if you really want to go a little further, chuck down some stones at the bottom and, some on the shore too. Also, just imagine that these sea pickles and candles are seagrass. But if you want to go even further, you're going to want to start thinking about the flow of a river. A river carries sediment and rocks downstream, which is why most river floors are almost entirely made of gravel. The lighter stuff like dirt and clay get carried away, leaving the heavier and stuff like rocks and gravel at the bottom. So the slower the flow of the river, the lighter the stuff at the bottom, and the faster the flow of the river, the heavier the stuff at the bottom. In faster flowing currents, I'd use stone and gravel and this kind of stuff for the bed. And then in slower flowing currents, I'd make the ground mud, soul soil, soul sand, and then you can use some coarse dirt as well. And then I think it's always a good idea to toss in some, custom made rocks and stuff. For the shore, you have a couple options. In slower flowing rivers, the shore can be dirty, like this with a lot of life and stuff, or even sandy. In fact, faster ones though, it's usually rocky like this. A strategy I really love for like slower flowing rivers and like I guess lakes and stuff is using coarse dirt and rooted dirt. So I put the coarse dirt kind of closer to the water so that it looks more saturated, and then I use this rooted dirt kind of farther away because it looks a little less saturated. And then I always cover it with just a bunch of rocks and, you know, ferns and grass and leaves and all that kind of stuff to kind of show off the fact that this soil and stuff is very nutrient rich. That's something to keep in mind, by the way. Rivers carry a lot of nutrients and stuff, so usually the shore of the river has a lot of plant life growing around it because of the amount of nutrients being spread. A more complicated but equally cool looking strategy is like the use of boulders and pebbles and gravel and all that kind of stuff, because a lot of rivers are just very gravelly and stuff. So I use gravel and coral blocks for the floor, make some big boulders and stuff, and then I really like using these walls just in the middle of the water because they pop out and they look like some, you know, rocks that are like a little further out. I think this is a super sick strategy. These next two also use the strategy of making the blocks near the water look more saturated. So for sandy beaches, you can use stripped oak wood and stripped birch wood to kind of transition into the sand. And then in red sand ones, I would recommend orange terracotta and stripped acacia wood. For sandy beaches, I also love using slabs and stuff to kind of slope it out a bit because I think this is just a little too harsh, and using these slabs can make it look more, you know, like it's sand. And then I use some oak in the water. Another thing I want to point out is that even on sandy beaches, green looking plants do grow. So I like using coarse dirt to plant, you know, grass and stuff on it, and I just always make sure that I'm covering each coarse dirt block because I don't really want the dirt to shine through. Finally, I made this one, which is kind of like a bit of a marshy kind of shore. There's no real reason why mud, podzol, and grass should go well together, but it really just does. And then under the water, I'm using mud and soul sand and soul soil like I did before. And really, just don't be afraid to crowd your shores with as much plant life as possible. I have this little cattail design with green glass and a brown candle. But whatever biome you're working with, you can always find some sort of plant life to put in the water or on the shore. Now for the water. There's pretty much two strategies that work really well: using water and using glass. So water is an obvious choice. You can fill up any area with water. You can grab water from it. You can swim in it. You can boat in it. It acts like normal water, and depending on the purpose of the river, beauty may not be your biggest concern. And honestly, I mean, looking at these, water is perfect most of the time, but there's some cases where blue water just doesn't look very realistic. For a lake or a really wide flat river, it's perfect because the water isn't moving much. It's just reflecting the same color as the sky. Beautiful. However, fast-flowing water is not blue. It's white or gray or white. In the case of fast-flowing water, I would 100% recommend trying your hand at using glass to capture the look of rapids. This is something you really have to practice to get good at, and I am not good at it at all. But there are plenty of builders that you can look at and take inspiration from. I personally use water for most things, but will occasionally use glass for like the splash of a waterfall. Sometimes I use it for an entire waterfall or for like a small stream. If you want to use a combination of water and glass, honestly, that is something that I would recommend. It's very easy to transition water to glass like this, and I don't even have to do a transition for these splashes. Honestly, this is the strategy I would recommend most. It's easy, it's swimmable, and it looks great. I do think it would be beneficial to show you how I make a splash. So I start from the middle with white stained glass, and then I kind of work my way out from there. And this is honestly something that you still just gotta develop an eye for, but that looks good to me. And at this point, I'd start adding in white panes. One thing that I always avoid is putting it against blocks. I think that having it just on its own looks a lot better. And yeah, just put in a bunch of these, make sure that they're not connecting to each other like that. And I use these guys to kind of fill in the gaps a little bit, but also I use them to go a little farther out than I was before. But see, now that's looking pretty good. And at this point, start using some other blocks so that you can place the white candle on it, and then you just break it. And then these guys will finally do the rest of the gap filling, and they'll go the furthest out. And then obviously, like once you finish, go in and do some touch-ups. I think that I need a couple more blocks to kind of thicken this out a bit, but honestly it's looking pretty good, and from a distance it really sells the effect of a splash. Obviously if I had some actual water splashing down, it would look a little better, but you get what I'm saying. Honestly, with rivers, don't worry too much. If you don't want to spend too much time for very little benefit, I just texture the shore and keep it at that. Just by putting effort into the shore and, you know, kind of thinking about the blocks that you're using, it's gonna look like you know a lot more than you really do. But yeah, I hope that this was helpful. Nope. Okay, now to cliffs. I've tried many techniques to texture cliffs, and I have some preferences on what I think looks the best, but there are quite a few options out there. One of my personal favorites is using sedimentary rocks. One good example of sedimentary rocks is the Badlands, where there are very clear color differences based on the layer of the rock. Honestly, I don't know the science behind this. I know that this is how rocks form in real life, but yeah, I don't know. Using sedimentary rocks just looks cool and is kind of realistic. Another one of my favorites is texturing based on lighting. You can give some extra dimension, some extra oomph to your terraforming by using light and dark blocks. This is a strategy I kind of learned from BOO. I don't think I used it too well here, but you can kind of get the picture. Because these basalt blocks over here are so much darker, it looks like this thing is jutting out a lot more than it really is, when it is only one block away. Some other options, you can just make a gradient of any block type. If you don't want to think too hard about your block choices, but don't want it to look very simple, you can just do this. You can also just use one block for your terraforming. I don't think it looks that great just using stone, but you know, it's something that you can do. And then you can also just imitate the way that Minecraft does it with 4 layers of dirt on over top of the stone. You got options. Just in general, pick the option you think would suit your area the best. For example, if you have a building completely made out of stone, it's gonna blend into the terraforming if your terraforming is made completely out of stone. So, you know, change the block to like diorite or something like that. We've covered what blocks you're gonna use. Now, how are you gonna use them? Some people just make a gradient like this, which is fine. I mean, that's how Minecraft does it too with the mesa, but me personally, I like doing this kind of crazy block vomit texturing thing. And I know that block vomit kind of catches strays and stuff, but I think that if you do it properly, this can look really fantastic. And so that's what I'm going to show you how to do over here. So I'm going to show this off by texturing this shape from earlier, and I'm going to use sedimentary rocks, so I have a couple saved hotbars and stuff. But yeah, we're just going to start at the bottom. And so something that I usually keep in my head is just gaps and diagonals. I'm using tuff at the bottom, but I put a mossy cobble at the bottom, and that creates a nice little gap there. And it's just kind of like a slow process, and you just kind of do whatever you think looks best. I don't like doing stuff when it's just right next to each other in a straight line, so usually I would probably chop this up with a different block, something like that. And you can kind of see we're already sort of getting somewhere. And it's really just like the exact same process all the way up. It's just an instinctual thing. If you place something and you're like, oh, that doesn't look right, you can always change it. And I just always keep coming back just to kind of get like a good view of it. But yeah, that's already looking pretty good. For this one, we're gonna do like a little bit of a moss thing up at the top. And so usually I try to use mossy cobblestone and tuff when I'm texturing into moss. I mean, texturing and shaping kind of go hand in hand, so oftentimes when I'm texturing, I'm looking at stuff like this and I'm like, okay, I think that this would look better if I did something like that, and so it juts out a little bit more, and you know, the shape always gets changed at least a little bit when I'm texturing. And look at that, it's already textured. I hope this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what to keep in your head when you're doing texturing like this. Again, there's also no one way of doing it, so whatever works for me may not work for you. Whatever works for you may not work for everyone else. You know, experiment with stuff and try to find, you know, the ways that work best for you. I'm also going to show you how to texture based on lighting. So we're going to use the same thing that we did before, but now we're just going to use all of these blocks to get some shading in there. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to place myself where I think the light should be coming from, and then I'm just going to imagine what areas are being hit with the most light. Some of these areas are going to be hit with a lot of light, some of these areas as well. But yeah, this is looking good. We're just going to start fading this out with some like andesite and stuff. But yeah, there we go. We got in the light gray wool for all of the parts that are being hit by the light. And so now we're going to think about what areas are shrouded in darkness, and is there anything casting a shadow? For shadows and stuff, you can already kind of use Minecraft's base like lighting and stuff, because like over here is a little shadowy, as you can see. Over here is a little shadowy, so we're just going to accentuate that. We're just going to use some basalt and cobbled deep slate at the very bottom for these really dark areas, and then we're going to smooth it out with some tuff like this. So there we go, that's already looking pretty nice, and we'll do some over here as well, even though this isn't the most visible thing ever. And I just kind of texture it with basalt and cobbled deep slate like a little bit. And then another thing that I like to do is putting some darker blocks towards the bottom as well. I don't know, it just kind of like directs your eyes upwards. But there we go, we textured based off of lighting, but it's very subtle. So when you're like far away, you can't tell that like we're using different blocks at all. It kind of just looks like Minecraft's lighting did this. But if you zoom in a little bit, then you can see, oh, these are different blocks. This is the strategy that BOO used and something that I kind of took from him, and I think that it looks really fantastic. I'm not the greatest at it because I'm still kind of new to this, but I think I'm getting the hang of it. But yeah, that looks great. Finally, hills. If you're terraforming in the desert or the mesa, your choices on blocks are pretty set in stone, or should I say set in stand? I mean, if you can think of something more creative, let me know, but that's all I could think of. However, if you're terraforming hills anywhere where there is grass, you have to make a decision. Do you want to show off the dirt side of a grass block, or do you want to use moss to cover it up? Me personally, a guy who goes for the realism, I use the moss, but you don't have to. That's the greatest thing about this. If I was doing the strategy where I have the dirt overhang on my cliffs, I wouldn't use moss because I'm trying to show off that dirt. As we talked before, in general, you're trying to keep your hills subtle so your cliffs and other things can really shine. So I really wouldn't go crazy on texturing your hills. I just use grass and moss and this occasional dirt thing, and that's about it. I just try to make it look good, but also not stand out. Okay, so we're gonna do some texturing right now. These are all the blocks that I'm gonna use, and probably some more. I want to do like some snow up here to kind of give like a source for these two waterfalls, and then I'm just going to use the rest of them to kind of, you know, do the usual like terraforming based on lighting. We're just going to go in here and start placing some snow, and I only want to do it in some locations. So I'll get like a basic shape like this, and then I'm actually going to make the stone around it just a little thicker. It's nice because putting in all of this snow and then putting like the stone around it is making this, you know, hill look even more rocky, which is really nice. And I think it's coming out pretty well. I will mention, by the way, I believe this was a strategy used by Good Times with Scar in season 8 of Hermitcraft, this whole snow thing, so credit to him. I got the snow to a point that I think is pretty decent, so now I'm gonna start going in with some moss and light gray wool and all the usual stuff. My strategy is pretending that like I'm a spotlight and I'm just trying to see what would get sun. And also I just thought I'm gonna come in with some diorite and kind of place it towards the edges of the snow to kind of blend it a little bit more. But there we go, that cliff is at a pretty good looking spot at this point, so I think I'm gonna move on to these bottom ones some amount of time later. All right, so that's looking pretty good. I think I'll move on from the mountain now and start working over here a little bit. Some longer amount of time later. Quick little update, I'm working on the shore right now. I got all this done, so I just did like a little bit of a stony shore over here since it's more rocky. And then I'll probably put in some like rocks on the shores as well eventually. And then over here, I'm just doing some like coarse dirt and some of these rooted dirts and stuff. And then, yeah, some longest time amount later. All right, with that all done, I think it's time to head on to step number 5, decorations. Oh, I didn't get... What looks better, this terraforming with grass and trees, or this one with nothing? It's hideous. Maybe this is what you're going for, but you can always make your terrain look way better by adding in some trees or something. Decorating, in my definition, refers to everything you add onto your terraforming. It could be natural things like plants, trees, and rocks, or it could be man-made things like a castle, a house, or just a building in general. I'm not going to get into the how-tos of custom trees or how to build in this this video because that is a whole nother nutshell. However, I do often talk about building and custom trees and terraforming in my series Surviving with Shoeler. So feel free to check out some of my other videos for some tips. All right, prefaces out of the way, let's get into some tips. 1. Make sure your decorations don't dwarf your terraforming. It's super easy to make some cool looking terraforming look super lame by adding in, you know, a huge house or tree on it. So don't do that. The size of your terraforming should match the size of whatever you're putting on it, unless you want to make it look really small. 2. Think in at least 3 different scales. So we got big rock, medium rock, small rock, even smaller rock. You know, let's quit it with the standalone huge boulders and trees, okay? Whenever someone says they're gonna add some rocks and trees to the terrain, they add like the most humongous stuff by itself. If you want to add some trees, have a big one, have a medium one, and have some small ones. One huge boulder would look super weird on its own, so you need to smooth it out with smaller and smaller boulders to taper it off. In real life, there isn't a clear line that dictates where a field ends and a forest begins. The forest kind of muddies over into the fields with, you know, increasingly fewer and smaller trees and bushes and stuff. Just make sure that you're thinking on a smaller scale. Bigger trees, rocks, and lakes are all great on a large scale, but you can't appreciate them without the smaller trees, little pebbles, and puddles on a smaller scale. 3. Add shrubbery. It is beyond me how much detail a little bit of grass and a couple of ferns will add to an area. I mean, just look at this. This looks lame. This looks freaking cool. And I don't care if you're in a desert or the nether, you can find something. Look at this. Basic looking desert by a river. Awesome looking desert by a river. Basic looking nether by the lava. Awesome looking nether by the lava. Believe me, finding these extra details to decorate your terrain will make your terraforming better and give it that extra level of detail to make it shine. Woohoo! 4. Quit it with the bone meal. I don't care what you think. It looks bad. Flower generation with bone meal is random, strange, and inconsistent. Most of the time, the shrubbery is just too dense. And I'm sorry, but tall grass is just not the most fantastic looking texture. Be deliberate with your details. People can tell if you took the easy way out by just bone meal spamming. 5. Think outside the box and add things that you think look good. Bamboo's not exactly native to the location I took inspiration from, but I thought it looked good, so I placed it down, added a string on top. You can use a green candle too if you want. And then I moved on. Cattails aren't in the base game, but I still add them everywhere because they look fantastic. I mean, look no further than Rendog's Season 10 base on Hermitcraft. He created a new, unique biome and added in a bunch of creative, custom plants to fit the theme. Just go freaking crazy with your decorating. The details you add are completely dependent on your inspiration and what kind of world building you want to do. No matter what you're taking inspiration from, just try to think of some sort of decoration that you can include. Maybe something from this list will be helpful, maybe not, I don't know. The main point of this step is to push you to think of ways to decorate your terrain that will make it feel lived in and alive. All right, so game plan with the things that we're adding in a bunch of trees and stuff, obviously a bunch of shrubs, little bushes and all that kind of stuff. We're gonna put a bunch of rocks kind of over there towards the front, and then anything else that I can think of I'll add, but that's the general idea. And I'm just gonna time lapse this because it's pretty simple. Okay, just coming in here for a quick little update. This is what I have so far. I really like, you know, what it looks like by the water. I put in these little plants and stuff. I have these little areas with like pink flowers that I think look really pretty. And then near the stones and stuff, I used walls to kind of like, you know, I guess like taper them out. And I think all I have left now is just adding in some trees and then adding in some like stones and stuff. So I'll get that done and then I'll come back to you. And there we have it, dude. I only added in like a couple trees and just a couple bit of boulders and stuff. If I was doing this again, I would probably add in a little bit more, but I don't have too much time left to record, so I kind of just have to like finish it off here. But yeah, I hope that this was helpful, you know, me kind of going through the steps, but look at this. I followed all of the steps directly, and look at what I created. It works. It works. It works. But yeah, I'm actually like really happy with this. I haven't created anything really kind of close to this before, so this is a cool project to have completed. Once again, with this video, my goal isn't to tell you, do this, do that, this is what looks good, this is how it should be done. My goal is to break down a path that's worked for me and share with you ways that I go about thinking about terraforming. Sure, it feels great to complete a huge mountain project that took a week to build in creative and a month to transfer to your survival world. You'll have a lot to be proud of, but ultimately that mega project is gonna feel pretty empty after the grandiosity fades. Building in Minecraft is an art form, and as any artist knows, the worth of the art is not tied to the scale of the art. The Mona Lisa is tiny and is admired as much as it is because of its subtleties, like her eyes looking just out of frame or her partial smile. With enough time and the right tools, anyone can make a huge sprawling custom jungle biome or something, but not everyone can make a little pond or garden that just feels so alive that you just want to sit there and never leave. If what you're trying to evoke in your terraforming is a one-time holy moly or wow, that's cool, but I personally think that it's much more rewarding to chase the subtle emotions that kind of just like make you grin. If you enjoyed this video at all or found any of my tips to be helpful, please do subscribe. This video has been in the works for several months now, and you know, it would be nice if you would subscribe. I make videos every other week, mostly in my survival world. They're usually a lot goofier than this one though. What? Is this the Fortnite bus? What is it doing here?
Okay, my mom said we're eating soon, so this has to be my last round.
Sounds like your mom hates you.
Well, your mom probably hates you because you're not even getting dinner.
Anyway, where are we dropping, boys?
I was thinking Shoeler.
Shoe York?
Yeah, dude.
Drop! We're over it right now.
I dropped.
Me too. Okay, I'm dropping. Is there like a parachute or something? I'm falling. I think I'm gonna die. No!
Shoeler!
No! But all of my videos center around building, so you're bound to find some inspiration or help just by watching. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment. Thanks for watching again. Bye.